and then she stepped on the ball.
Whose ball?
You always do this. You always do this. And the audience is wondering, what were they talking about before the show went live? We were actually talking about Christmas Vacation. That's pertinent to Lovecraft somehow, I suppose. Not at all. And how it's my favorite Christmas movie.
It's a good one.
How Randy Quaid has turned into his character from Christmas Vacation.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
That's the movie with Chevy Chase, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's being visited by his cousin or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. I give you the Griswold family Christmas tree. All right, so I've got actually 10 cool prizes to give away today, courtesy of the folks from Lovecraft.
10 prizes?
Well, they're basically 10 codes for this app. I've got 5 for Apple phones, iOS, and 5 for Android. So this is the 3rd of December. Anytime between now and the 10th, if you're listening to this show and you'd like to be in the running for these, this Lovecraft is, I don't know if I'm going to describe it very well, but it's basically reading Lovecraft, and it's kind of interactive with music, and I'm not doing it justice. And so for 10 people, you can get a free copy. And for those who don't get one, check out Lovecraft, just like it sounds, the letter I and Lovecraft on your Android phone or your Apple phone.
I've got several of those books, the 2 that they did earlier and the iPo one, and man, they are really cool to read on your iPad or I mean, everything moves on them. It's really, really neat.
Yeah.
So I'll be taking one of those codes.
They're pretty fantastic. Okay, you will. We're giving away 9. I will give you one because you helped me out with this show, as do the rest of it. Do you, any of you guys want one?
Well, they're for your viewers, Mike.
No, they actually told me to do with them what I wanted to do with them. So
screw the viewers.
All right.
Are we allowed to do that?
Just want to go on record that Matt said that and not me. Kelly, do you have an Android or you have an Android? I know you don't have an Apple phone.
No, but I read those on my iPad, so I do have an Apple for that.
All right, we have 4 iOS ones to give away and 5 Androids to give away. And here's how you can be in the running. Lovecraft eZine prizes at gmail.com. Lovecraft eZine prizes at gmail.com. And put on the subject and whatever awesome things you want to say about us in the body of the email. That'd be great. So boost our egos. Sometimes they falter, especially Kelly's. You got to keep them. No, never.
At least he's not wearing a smoking jacket this week.
I'm disappointed. I can't tell you how disappointed I am in you.
I spent the day smoking a piece of meat and hanging out at the pool. So
that's a cool story, bro.
Well, it's how the rich people roll, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah, what I did was I hung up like a bunch of strings of light, and then I went to plug them in, and like 3/4 of them are out. And I just didn't.
You're going to have to check each bulb individually.
No, I didn't do any. I decided to leave them up, and it'll be just a Scrooge's Christmas.
We checked all the bulbs, didn't we, Randy? Yeah, Dad, yeah. I'm sure of it. All right, we better do introductions. I'm Mike Davis with Lovecraft eZine, and I do stuff. Lots of different things. So I'm not even sure what it is that I do. I know I edit books sometimes. And I do this. And I publish books. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Rick.
I'm Rick Lay, and I write articles on pulp writers and write stories using established pulp heroes.
Pete.
I'm Pete Rollick, and I apparently have a halo tonight. It's the light.
I don't think you earned it.
Yeah, no. I must have stolen it from someplace.
Matt.
I am music, and I write the songs that make the whole world cry.
Kelly.
Kelly Young, executive editor of Strange Eons magazine.
And professional alcoholic, I see by your tag.
That's right.
Well, yeah, if you're going to do something, don't do it halfway.
No, I do it full-assed.
So we've got a new movie night at Lovecraft eZine, and it's every Saturday night at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, 7 Pacific. And I use a website called Rabbit. It's rabb.it, if I remember correctly. You can just Google Rabbit, I guess. Maybe you'll get a bunch of rabbits. I don't know.
Just one thing like that doesn't work was at least it wouldn't let me use it was Internet Explorer. I had to use Firefox.
You must be the only guy left using Internet Explorer.
Maybe I am.
It is the standard for my office, so I don't know what the hell you're talking about. There's 2,000 people still using it.
Damn.
Some of us are just used to using it. I was saying that was one of the. I have to do. I know what I'm going to try to do, and I'll probably get it to work. I wasn't available to make it, but I'll make it next week definitely.
Okay. Well, basically, it's a website that allows people to watch a movie together in real time, and on the right side of the screen, we can text chat with each other while the movie's going. It's pretty cool. Go to Rabbit, rabb.it. And if you'll add me, if you're interested, that is, in being in on these, add me as a friend. And my ID there is, well, it's all together, no spaces, Mike Davis 222. Mike Davis 222. And I'll accept your friendship, and I'll invite you the next time we have a show. Next week, I believe we're watching a film called We Go On. Last night we watched Banshee Chapter, which was actually very good, wasn't it, Matt?
It was really quite entertaining. I was. It wasn't that gory. There were a few jump scares, but it was a nice, creepy story. They even quoted Lovecraft in the middle of it, and it was very much like the show From Beyond, the story From Beyond.
Yeah. And they actually talked about the story From Beyond in the movie, but it was basically used ideas from that story. The other really nice thing that I liked about it, without spoilers really, is the use of number stations, because I've always found number stations to be really fascinating. Don't you guys? I think they're cool.
Yeah. Very strange, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, has anyone actually figured out what they are?
I was sitting here trying to think, how can I explain to anybody in the audience that doesn't know what a number station is? And I don't think I could do it very effectively. Could you? Any of you guys?
Well,
I know
you can.
I think you find it on ham radio, right? Or it's like basically
not necessarily.
There are these frequencies where if you tune in on them, intermittently there's like scratchy noises or letters being recited or numbers being recited in no random order, and nobody they're like these uncrackable codes where nobody can record the whole thing, and people assume that like this might be how spies are talking to each other.
Yeah, they don't know who's doing this. Yeah,
because they're pretty much uninterceptable, because the station, the frequency changes, and then the code always changes. And you can imagine what kind of creepy story you could come up with.
If you're interested in this, you can actually... Sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that was one of the storylines in Lost. There was a number station that they found by tuning into a frequency. So that played a big part in there. And then I was going to ask Matthew, or you, or anybody else who's more familiar with this, is it just a recording that continually plays, or is it live?
So according to some analysis, the speech is actually synthetic. At least the more recent ones are.
Some of them. There's a bunch of different ones.
Yeah. But the problem is that some of the stuff, they suspect there are reports of number stations going back to World War I. But prior to actually transmitting people or synthetic voices speaking the numbers, they were transmitted as Morse code. So it's weird, and they've evolved over time, but everybody agrees that these are the way various governments communicate with their spies across the world.
If you're interested in listening to some of these, there's quite a few of them recorded at YouTube. If you go to YouTube and just search for number stations, I'm sure you'll find quite a few examples. I did that a while back, and it's definitely weird. So
if you hear one, you're supposed to go out in the middle of the desert by yourself in the middle of the night with your car, only a quarter full of gas in the tank before you leave, and
if you're in a movie, yeah,
and a flashlight with dicey batteries.
Yeah, that's what that girl did last.
And if the fog rolls in, you get out of the car and look around.
Don't tell anybody where you're going.
Yell! Who's there? Is anyone there? When you're 75 miles from the nearest town, out in the desert. So,
this one thing I want to add. This sounds like some speculation that existed in the 1930s when people were trying to explain what radio static was. And one of the goofy theories, it was the voices of the dead communicating from beyond. You learn that if you read Doc Savage. It's the plot of a novel called The Pirate's Ghost. So they were debating static, and now we're debating these other things today.
Well, so if you haven't seen the Banshee chapter, it's definitely a Lovecraftian film. Check it out, and it's pretty good. So, and again, if you want to be part of movie night, go to rabb.it, Mike Davis 222.
There is a John Cusack movie, I think, called The Number Station.
Yeah.
It was about that, using them to communicate with spies, about how you're going to precipitate acts of terrorism.
Yeah, I remember that being a really horrible movie.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it wasn't very good, so if you've got nothing better to do and you don't feel like hammering a tack into your thumb, you could watch this John Cusack movie.
I'm pretty sure I always have more important things to do than watch a John Cusack movie.
Hey,
hold on now.
Post Blank was good.
That was excellent, and his first.
Let's say his films lately. Let me put it that way.
Would we be able to watch things that are available on YouTube together?
Yeah.
I can think of some good thriller episodes like The Weird Tailor, if it's still out there on YouTube.
Okay.
We can talk about that later.
Yeah, just shoot me an email.
Yeah.
So just real briefly before we started, and I had no idea about this at all, Mr. DC guy. DC TV just did another superhero crossover, and you guys were saying it was really good.
Yep, it was everything Justice League should have been.
Yeah. If you were to sit them side by side, I would say that the Crisis on Earth X was far superior to Justice League.
I can't wait to check it out this week then.
It had great fights. It had better fight scenes, I'll say that.
Okay, so and again, for those who don't know, it begins with Supergirl, then it goes to Arrow, then it goes to Flash, and then it goes to Legends of Tomorrow. Is that right?
Yeah. They don't tell you when the credits come on, they just say Crisis on Earth X. You don't know that you're watching Supergirl or Arrow or Flash.
Right.
They don't begin with the standard openings like, I'm Barry Allen, I'm the fastest man alive, and so forth. No, don't do any of those.
Right. I'm Barry Allen, I'm the fastest man alive. This is the mess I've gotten the world into lately, and I'm the only one fast enough to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of superheroes that are constantly cleaning up their own messes and think of themselves as heroes. I think that's why I don't care for the Flash TV series anymore.
Well, that happens on Legends, but they recognize it. They in fact, they even joke about it. They're saying,
yeah,
we're the people who screw things up and then have to fix them.
Yeah. Well, Legends doesn't take itself seriously.
Right.
It's a fun, silly show. But anyway,
I'll tell you this: it does in this crossover.
Oh, does it?
Big time.
Oh, it's good.
And it's good that it takes it serious.
This has nothing to do with Lovecraft at all, but lately I've been watching a show called Person of Interest. This show is this is just a really good show. I don't want to say too much about it. In the first couple of seasons, you think it's one thing, and then it morphs into something else. They kind of sneak in a theme that there's no way they could have snuck in, and the show made it in the first season or so. That's all I'll say about that. But basically, this guy is Batman in a suit, and he's got an Alfred, and they've got a Bat Cave, and it's not a superhero film, but it's not a superhero TV series, but there's some parallels.
It keeps evolving, Mike. It stays. It may have run on a season too long, but it was very true to itself, and I thought the denouement of the whole series was finally very good. It gets in some ways creepier than it is right now, wherever you're at in the series.
Well, if you're out there and you're looking for something new to watch, yeah, I would check it out, definitely. I was going to say why, but I shouldn't say anything. So, all right, let's see here. Alexander O'Neill, one of our listeners, wants Pete and Matt and Rick to talk about book collecting and bibliophilia. So, Pete, you got some things to say?
No.
Okay, good. All right, let's move on.
Is that sex with underage books? I'm trying to figure out what bibliophilia is again.
I knew somebody was going to go there. As soon as I said that, I thought, did I mispronounce that?
You personally could try that with the Very Hungry Caterpillar.
Oh,
you don't have kids. Yeah. Never mind.
Well, I'll add one thing. If you're going to collect it now, you got to learn how to use the internet. Save you a ton of money.
Oh, I think this internet thing's a fad. I think it's going to go away.
No, but I was saying you've got a lot of stuff that's public domain. And if you get yourself a Kindle, you can find a lot that's free on Amazon.
Well, that's not collecting, though. That's just if you're a reader and just want to read this stuff and you don't care about the format. Frankly, I think in some ways the rise of the internet has just about taken away my ability to find a great bargain on an old paperback. You know what I mean?
I do.
Isn't there some kind of bot that automatically prices them?
Yeah, I used to go.
You can get them for a penny on Amazon, an old paperback. Or are you talking about something else?
Well, I'll say in the old days, and we're talking late 70s, early 80s here. I would go to some place. I mean, I live in Long Island, New York, but I would go to, let's say, I think it was San Diego, which has like a huge bookstore on every corner. And I would go in and find things for 50 cents or $1 that would be $20 in a catalog of used books. And I've lost that experience, but it's also, when it's what do you collect? My primary reason for collecting was to read. I like certain. I would get certain things if they had covers or whatever, but that's if I saw. I didn't go out of my way to get this illustration. Like, for instance, I wanted to read all of Alan Quatermain by H. Rider Haggard. in the 70s to find out what all the books in the series were, let alone find the books, was a massive effort. That's why I say you go on the internet now, you got them all listed, and you can find an e-text of everyone. So it depends if your primary need is to read, or if your primary need is to have if you like the cover art. A lot of people collect Doc Savage paperbacks because they like James Baumer's artwork. It's going to differ today.
Well, yes and no. So everything that you said is true, but I found a ways around it. So, for example, there are bookstores in South Florida now, used bookstores, and I despise this, that no longer price their books. You go through the store, you find what you want, you bring it up to the desk, and they look everything up on the internet and then give you a price.
Oh, that's bullshit.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
And that is just so. And then when you say no, they put it in a pile and they price it and put it up on eBay because you've just done all the work for them, right?
That is lame.
That is very lame. But what I have discovered is that I still go to used bookstores because there are still some good ones. And, things change in price over time and whatnot. But I have discovered the Friends of the Library shops. And these are little shops that are inside libraries or, flea markets where they've rented cheap space. And their library system donates books, and this is a resale shop, and they resell used books that have been on the library shelves, but they also, people bring in boxes and boxes of donations, and they drop them in, and they price them basically by the pound.
That's an interesting thought. I've donated many books to my local library, and that's what they do with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what they do with it.
That's a good point, because I don't know how good it is now, but I used to buy a lot.
So
I have a lot of libraries, and there would always be some shelf of books for sale. And I got a first edition Tarzan and the Castaways.
Yep.
For 50 cents.
Right. So
which is outrageous.
It's catch as catch can, but just like used bookstores used to be, these places have now taken over that niche. And just as there used to be used bookstores a lot in big cities, these resale shops are showing up en masse because it's a great way for little libraries to make money. And, I did it yesterday, and I walked through the door, I handed in my donation pile, and sitting on the shelf was this and this. Which, I don't own because I was never going to spend $13.99 to buy them.
Well, say what that is for the people who aren't watching.
These are preteen Lovecraft stories.
Yeah,
right.
Professor Gargoyle is essentially a retelling of From Beyond, and they use a lot of Lovecraftian place names. And
I think I have those first two as well.
They built their middle school on the site of Tillinghast's mansion. So that's what that is.
So, and they're in pretty good shape.
They have like a lot of books for that age, which I would venture to say would be somewhere 9 to 12. They're perfectly sized for small hands. They have lots of attractive little illustrations in them. They're easy to read, and there's usually some geeky, nerdy type protagonist who becomes the hero.
Right. So for $2, I add these to my Lovecraft collection, and I'll clean them up. They've got discard stamps on them, but no big deal. But then, sitting right next to that same pile is the first British edition of Darkly Dreaming Dexter. And I can't find the American edition. So, for another $3, I'll pick this up. Yeah. This I might keep for myself, but if you know books, what you can do is find great stuff that people want, eBay it, and I literally have a separate bank account that I feed my eBay stuff into just to buy books out of.
That's funny, Pete. Books is the thing. It's like,
right.
I kind of know what I want, but I can't say I understand the market, or
right.
I can't value books properly.
Right.
I'm not that kind of person. I'm more like Rick. I'm going there for pleasure, but I do like having a copy of the book.
Right.
I like having as good a condition, attractive a copy as I can.
Yep.
As opposed to actually having a museum quality collection. I got stuff stacked all over the place. I'm sure like a librarian would come in there and have a heart attack.
Yeah. The thing that happens to me is, well, let me go back in time. So I have always, since I was knee high to a grasshopper, collected books. I've always been in bookshops, and started off with tons of paperbacks, and finally, after I graduated college, I was like, you know what? I started doing what they called scouting books. I had a friend who ran a bookshop, and I would go out on my weekends, and I would go to yard sales and flea markets and whatnot, and I would bring her the best of the best, and she would give me cash for it, and she would put it on her shelves and resell it. So I made a little bit of money. But about a year or two afterwards, Abe Books came online, and they started selling, it gave you a place to sell books to the whole world.
Uh-oh. Lost Pete.
Well, see, the way I started was I just really liked Lovecraftian stuff, and I was determined to read everything that I could. And I really started, I've always had Lovecraftian books, but I just started picking them up seriously, I'd say in 2003, 4, 5, when I started like trying to track down obscure stuff. And that's when I could get, and so I've just sort of kept my ear to the ground and tried to follow all the publishers so I could get in on the ground floor when they offered something new. I'm not really good about going back and picking stuff that was like, a rare Arkham House edition. I don't have a copy of the original printing of The Shadow over Innsmouth, or anything like super valuable. But like by doing that, it's almost less possible now because all these book companies sell special limited editions, and they advertise through, they promulgate their books through Kickstarter or social media, and it's very hard to get a brand new book that is really limited in the same way. But like, I was able to get a copy of Cthulhu Express, which there may have been less than 20 copies printed, just because the bottom fell out of the market and the guy stopped printing them, and then he lost the rights. That was just a matter of luck.
Cthulhu Express. I don't even think I've heard of that one.
Did you ever see the Book of the Black Sun by G.W.
Yeah, I have that.
For a while, he was like, he had his own press, and he was selling things through Lulu. So it was a lot of it was print on demand, and basically, like a lot of other small publishers, like back then, Mythos Books was big. I'd check their website on a monthly basis, and he advertised this book, Cthulhu Express. And I'm not saying it's a great book in terms of content, but it ended up being, it was for sale for a while, and then his finances, I think, went crazy, and he lost his ability to publish. And then by the time he got back on his feet, because he's active again doing things, he had lost all the rights to the stories, so it's not going to be reprinted.
Hey, sorry. Mike.
Actually, you got cut out at exactly right when you finished talking about Abe Books, so it wasn't in mid-sentence or anything.
Right. So
why don't you finish your thought, Matt, and then let's have Pete continue.
So I think if like someone wants to seriously collect Lovecraftian books, or like at least be in on it, so like suppose that there's going to be something come out, there's only going to be 50 copies or something. You kind of have to stay very assiduously screening publishers' websites, social media, listening to shows like this, and then you will see if something's being released. You can at least get in on the ground floor anymore. I think what Pete says is interesting. I think it's very hard to go in and pick up now books that may not have necessarily much intrinsic value, but they're so uncommon that the internet prices them out of existence.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
All right. So Pete, you had left off at Abe Books.
So Abe Books gave me the opportunity to sell stuff that I was finding rather than go through a middleman. And and once again, I was able to build a better collection by selling off stuff that I knew other people wanted. And the best story I have is I spent weeks deciding whether or not to buy a copy of The King in Yellow, and went out with a friend one morning, and we were driving around, and I said, I think I'm going to buy a copy of The King in Yellow, a first edition, and I'm going to spend $300 or $400 on it. And we went down to this little bookstore in Fort Lauderdale, and we're just looking at through the shelves, and he's like, "Isn't this the book you want to buy?" And he just hands me a copy of The King in Yellow in first edition for $20.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the book I want to buy. But you go through. I mean, I've found copies of The Sun Also Rises in first edition. You have to you go through books, and you see things that you don't ever see before, and you don't want to leave them behind because they got to be worth more than what you think you're going to pay for. And then you can use that to either trade for, barter with, or sell outright and build a way to build your own collection. This for a long time was my Bible.
A Cthulhu Mythos?
A Cthulhu Mythos bibliography and concordance.
I've got that.
You got that? Does yours look like this?
No, because I don't write the books that you write.
No, this is just a list of, I'm looking for Clark Ashton Smith stuff, and this is all the stuff that I've found and I've got. So I used to carry this in my car.
Did you see the chapbook by Glenn Barras?
Yes.
I used that for quite some time.
Yeah.
I have a copy like that, people. Mine's beat up.
Yeah, well, mine's pretty beat too. But yeah, but this is just Cthulhu Mythos stuff. If collecting weird fiction is a lot bigger than the mythos, and there's never going to be a perfect bibliography or concordance for you to go out and find your stuff. But I will also tell you another little trick. So in April, I've never seen this before, Joe Lansdale's coming to my town.
Cool.
Yeah. So, I dig through my shelves, but then I spend, I find these two, Bumper Crop and Act of Love. I'm going to get these suckers signed. Now, Joe is a mythos writer. He's written mythos stories, mostly Westerns, and I'll get all that stuff signed. But, I'll get stuff for my personal collection, and then I'll get this stuff signed, and I'll either trade it or sell it for stuff I want.
That's the question. Have you ever seen Joe's signature?
Yes. I actually, so here's a story. I was at the World Horror Convention in Atlanta. This was, Peter wasn't even born yet. I don't think Peter was even conceived yet. So it was like 20 years ago. And I went up to Joe and asked him to sign some stuff for me. And I handed him a copy of the hardcover book club for Midnight Graffiti. And he looked at it, and he handed it to his wife, and she said, "What the hell is this?" And I said, "It's the book club." And she's like, "I never signed a contract for a book club." So I actually had 2 copies. He signed one and he took one, and as evidence, and then he sent me a copy of the Magic Wagon, a signed limited edition, as a gift. But yeah, I have seen Joe's signature. It's not pretty.
Yeah. I mean, I was at a Philip Jose Farmer's house, and he was there, and he signed something for. He was signing, like, we had a booklet to commemorate this event, and there's no way in heck you could know that was Joe Lansdale.
No. Have you seen Charles DeLynne's signature?
No.
He takes the pen like this and he swirls it like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's blotting out something. So,
Joe Lansdale. Speaking of Joe Lansdale, he wrote one of my favorite Batman stories.
Yes, which one?
Forget the title, but
Something with Razor in it.
Yeah, the God of the Razor is in it. It's a Lovecraftian Batman story.
Yep. So.
And it's really good. It's in, I don't know, New Adventures of Batman or something. It's on the shelf over there where I can't reach it.
Yeah. No, he's a very prolific and varied writer. So David Del Cole just typed in the live chat. Subway Jack. That's the name of the story. Subway Jack. Okay.
Yeah, Subway Jack. Thanks, David.
So that's the way that I fund this stuff. Plus I kind of sometimes I like tell my publisher I just let them be paid in books.
You tell your wife that?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's still more cost effective, right?
But what if what you're looking for isn't in a book, it's in some smoldering issue of Weird Tales, which go for enormous prices?
Well, sometimes, but then every once in a while, Barnes & Noble will put out something like this.
All right, you look for those. But
for those.
There are about 3 websites, which if you put them all together, you'll probably get 70% of Weird Tales in a PDF.
Yep. I'm constantly looking for crap like this. The best of Weird Tales. Stephen Desmankiewicz publishes a whole bunch of good, anthologies that tend to bring in stuff like that. And then Martin Greenberg did Rivals of Weird Tales.
Yeah, that was very good.
That was very good. Oddly enough, Barnes & Noble is publishing, or maybe not publishing or releasing through them, bargain books that are very weird.
Yeah, they've been that way for a while.
Yeah. And I've been picking stuff up left and right, and they reprinted Book of Cthulhu in a hardcover. I was surprised at that. I picked that up because I'd rather have the hardcover.
It's probably very inexpensive.
Yeah.
For what you would normally pay for a hardcover. That's
right.
Ross's Book of Cthulhu?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But you can still walk through used bookstores and pick up things like the Brian McNaughton, soft porn Lovecraft series. You know this stuff, Matt, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little later.
All of which is rewritten better at some point.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little later.
Okay.
Right. So, these, haunting bookshelves is, paperbacks is surprisingly productive. I mean, Primeval is a great little anthology. Got some Lovecraftian stuff in it. Ligotti, Charles Grant, Dennis Etchison. And then, you go into your Goodwill and you find Jeff Thomas. Yeah.
Jeffrey Thomas Deadstock, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I need a copy, but, you don't leave it behind when, somebody else could use it.
Yeah, I found that going to not Goodwills, but we have here in the Pacific Northwest and maybe everywhere, we have these antique malls where people just have a booth basically, and they're selling things by consignment. And I've got a list of things that I'm always looking for. I like collecting Stephen King stories in their original form, so it's tough to find the Cavalier stuff, but I just got this weekend.
Nice.
Playboy, 1983.
Just for the story.
Has the word processor,
Nice.
which became word processor of the gods in Skeleton Crew.
Right.
And
So,
it's kind of neat to find these early things. And you know what? It cost $1.
yeah.
Right.
But, Kelly's hinting on something. So I used to carry a lot of cash because, I would also stop at, there was a lot of bookstores, men's used bookstores, and look for back issues of Cavalier.
You know what? I never even thought of that.
Oh yeah.
For Mickey Spillane.
And for Mickey Spillane and Clive Barker and Dean Koontz, and there are a lot of writers published porn.
Yeah.
And it's very collectible. And hard to find, and
a copy of the book where the pages don't stick together.
Well, yeah, there's that. There's always that issue.
Oh God.
But yeah, it's weird the places that you have to go. In fact, actually, if you know my story from the Ramsey Campbell tribute book, that is based on me having to haunt through bookstores and men's magazine stores looking for this stuff.
It was a great story, by the way.
Thank you.
Some people did best.
And a convenient excuse.
Yeah, no.
I've even been to a half-price bookstore or two and seen Pete Rollick books on the shelf.
And
in Texas.
Tons of them, Pete.
Really? Here's the funny thing.
Not tons of them.
I have never seen one. I have only seen one of my books, Reanimators, in my local used bookstore. That's bizarre to me. But
I see them all the time. They look brand new, like they've never even been read.
Yeah. Just like the copies of Strange Eons that I see.
How dare you, sir?
He's referring to Robert Bloch's book, not your magazine.
Oh man, wouldn't it be nice to be able to find that everywhere you go?
A nice crispy version of that. Yeah, that would be fun.
Even in paperback, right?
Yeah, it was the dragon-like monster on the cover.
Yeah. Worst comes to worst, if you really want to pay high prices. Conventions. Conventions are not a bad place. At least, if you go to Necronomicon, you know that there's going to be Mythos books there. You might have to pay through the nose.
It just depends on if you're collecting to read, if you're a serious collector, like a real bibliophile, like my collection's a hybrid. Some of it they would scoff at because I don't have the original Weird Tales, the original Arkham House books. Do you know what I mean?
Well, also,
by the time I got into collecting, I thought, well, those are a little out of my price range. They've just skyrocketed in recent years.
And yeah, that's the thing. I think you touched on this a little earlier. There are things that I look at and I say, that's just out of my price range. I don't want to pay for it. But then it goes away and it never becomes available again.
Didn't you say that happened to Pugmire's first book from Centipede?
Yeah. Yeah. The Tangled Muse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a signed copy of that puppy.
I have the proof.
That's a beautiful book.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous book. It got all snapped up and then it vanished.
But in some ways, I have a lot of Arkham House, and probably anything that was available from 1972 onward that was Lovecraftian. You get the later republications of these stories have a lot of typos fixed, have corrected text. If you're going to buy Arkham, the only Arkham houses I really go back to, well, they used to have these collections that were Lovecraft in diverse hands, and they had Lynn Carter's early glossaries.
Yeah.
And some other articles that are very rare. And book, well, that came out in paperback in 2 volumes.
Yep.
But that book's important, I think, because I think they reprinted the deep ones by James Wade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that used to be the main reason I would go back to that edition.
The Haunter of the Graveyard by J. Vernon Shea is the story in here that's probably never been reprinted except in the paperbacks.
It may have been in that In Search of J. Vernon Shea. I'm just wondering if that was.
Maybe.
I know it had Dead Giveaway. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think Bob, I think it may only have Dead Giveaway, which is the sequel.
Right.
And I think when Bob Price reprinted it, it was just Dead Giveaway.
Yep.
It's a nice little story, but you're not going to lose much mythos knowledge if you don't have it.
Yeah, it's not going to drive you insane either for not having it.
Right.
So.
Well, there's a lost story by him that was only published in France.
Right.
Called the Necronomicon or something.
Right. But one of the stories I'd love to see reprinted, and I've only read it once online and it disappeared, was Larry Niven's The Last Necronomicon. Larry Niven is a great little secret Lovecraft writer. He drops mythos stuff into his stories all the time. Dream Park stories are Lovecraftian, but they're simulated Lovecraftian. In the Legacy of Herat, the river is called the Miskatonic, and this is World of Tovs. This is one of his critical known world stories. I have realized is Lovecraftian. This is about a statue found underneath the ocean that's tentacled and one-eyed that comes back to life and tries to destroy the world.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
But it's all got a scientific alien explanation. But and then it goes back to that they've already destroyed the universe once.
Mm-hmm.
Very Lovecraftian, and but not marketed that way at all.
Spell that again, that title.
The World of Tovs, Ptavvs.
There's no other way to buy it?
Oh, I'm sure you can buy it.
I'm Googling.
Ptavvs. This is the old Ballantine first edition. It's been published a bunch of times.
Paperback. Oh yeah, it's available in a lot of different formats. Mass market paperback from $2.25 on Amazon.
Also, audiobook. Did you see?
Yeah, I did see that. I may have to pick that up.
Really good story, and a good way to get into Niven's known universe.
Okay. When was that written? 75, it says.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a soft spot for 70s sci-fi.
If I find something signed and I can afford it, I never leave it behind. It's amazing.
It's like never leave a man behind,
That's
never
right.
leave a book behind.
Right. I picked this up at Necronomicon. I had a copy, but this one was signed by Tim Kirk. So
Dreams from Relay by
Lynn Carter.
His poetry.
Yeah. I had a copy of this, but this one was signed by Tim Kirk, so I traded something else I had for this, and I'm very happy. The one signature I don't have is a Lynn Carter. For some reason, he just didn't sign a lot, and they don't become available.
So going back to, if you're out there, I guess you got to start somewhere, but it requires a certain amount of being assiduous, checking websites. It depends on how much money do you have to spend. You want the book just to read the story, you can just borrow it from the library, interlibrary loan. You don't have to, there's a guy named James Ambule he used to do that, and he Xeroxed everything, and he had a huge amount of Xerox stories, and he was happy with that.
Yeah, I actually used to go down to the Temple University Weird Fiction collection, and they would allow you to photocopy 15 pages a day.
So there's either that, or you just have to really be diligent, hitting the websites, going to conventions, going on books, looking on eBay. You know, I periodically look on eBay, and eventually you will get the books that you want. Yeah. Sometimes you aren't going to find them at the price that you want.
Yeah.
Some books are just like, I got a book. I like collecting books that have good art in them. And I had published a list about this. And there was a version published of The Color Out of Space by this artist. I've got it up there somewhere. There were only 66 copies made or something like that. You're just not going to be able to pick one of those up. Maybe eventually one will come out. You know, that's why you kind of, if you really want to be compulsive about it, you've got to pay attention to multiple writers and artists on social media, and they'll announce something. Like, if you want to collect the art of Mike Bukowski, you have to be sort of subscribed to his Facebook page, and then he'll say, my latest little booklet, which is kind of handmade and hand-printed, is going to be for sale on Friday. And then if you don't get to it by Saturday morning at the latest, it'll be sold out, and then you'll just be SOL. So you have to be sort of like any other, I guess, ridiculous hobby. You have to be ridiculously diligent.
Yeah, and then, you know, I always try to conserve my Cthulhu buck as much as possible.
Very true.
And one of the things I've looked at is, okay, I can get it from Amazon new for $8.99. Free shipping, everything's great, but I go out to eBay. I go out to eBay, and it's $7 with shipping, and it's new. And if you have any problem, you send it back, and eBay sends you all your money back.
Yeah, I look at that. I look at the price of used on Amazon plus $3.99 shipping versus eBay. I look at Abe Books. And there's a lot of cross-referencing.
Yeah.
This is that Color Out of Space I was talking about. It's in a very nice tray-cased edition. You might even have a copy of it. The artist was Amy Barrezo. This was published in 2016. And she has all these use of color and geometric shapes. It's a very unusual and unique hand-sewn book. You kind of had to be aware that it was being printed to even have a chance of getting it.
You should just send that to me, Matt.
Yeah, it's in the mail. Just go down to the post office.
Still looking for that Carcosa book.
Yeah, just go down to your box and your mailbox and wait for that.
You can only that Carcosa book you can only get from the artist himself.
Yeah, well, Matt said he was going to send it to me. I still haven't received it.
I did say that. Will do. So, all right. And then I don't know much about, like, Pete knows a lot better than me about proper storage and care for books, but that's a little beyond the scope. I have them stacked up like cordwood in my library.
And that's probably fine. I had a client, when I was selling books, I had a client who would vacuum seal his books and then drop them into freezers. Frost-free freezers. Yeah.
That's going above and beyond.
But, yeah. That was crazy.
Anything else on this topic before I go on to the next one?
No, but you know, Amazon has. I mean, as Arkham House hasn't published a lot of books lately. You know, they're still hanging on, but they're not. But they have and then sort of Golden Griffin, you know, took their place for a while, put out some good books. But now you're looking at, if you really want to get in early, the Fedogan and Bremer and, you know, PS Publishing are the places to go. The problem with PS is it's British, And sometimes the stuff gets across the park, the pond, and other times it doesn't.
You have to find an American dealer.
Yep.
I go through Camelot books for them.
In Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're saying they've been very reasonable price. I got the two Ramsey Campbell, the second part of his trilogy, and the tribute one that Joe was involved with.
Okay.
Joe Pulver.
So.
And as much as I just would say, as much as I do read for the stories, there are art books that I buy. I buy all of P.S.'s illustrated Lovecraft. And a superbly done collection.
If you like Peter von Schali's art.
Well, I do.
Yeah. I think people, that's the kind of thing where I look at that and I say, I like it well enough. I think you better sample before you buy. Look on the internet.
Yeah, I would say that about any artist.
I actually have some older Peter von Schali stuff, which I really enjoy a little bit more than his newer stuff. But tastes change and styles change.
It's also occasionally I get that one thing from him, which I never saw the High Priest of Lang done right until I saw his artwork for Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. I said, that's how he should look.
Matt, you've got a couple of items, like a couple of new comics, you said.
Oh, yeah. There's publishing happens apace, and different strange Lovecraftian type comics come and go. So like this one I just heard about, it's called Killing Pikmin. Okay, it was released as like, I think 4 separate books. The story is by...
this is the omnibus?
Yeah, this is the omnibus. The story is by Jason Becker, and the very interesting art is by John Ray. I'll link it to the page. Lettering and stuff was by Matt Talbot. The publisher was Archaea Entertainment. And so it's like, I'd never heard of it before, and then it just popped up somehow in my feed. Yeah. And it is about a detective who is tracking down a guy named Richard Upton Pickman, who's a child murderer, who has made a compact so that he can't be killed. And per se, it is not the Richard Upton Pickman, but there are Lovecraftian overtones. And the art is quite stylish. So,
could you show us some of the art inside?
Sure, I'm not really...
Okay. That's good.
Hey, Matt, did this get... was this recent? Because I actually have the 4 issues that collects, and that was from years ago.
I don't know. I just discovered it. Here it's published. This was published 2008, so you're right. But like you say, you're a collector. Things pass you by, and then you might be able to come back and scoop them up again.
Well, especially at your age, Matt, it's easy to miss stuff.
Okay, well, the thing is, this omnibus may be newer, but again, if you just sort of keep at it, you will have some interesting things in your collection. Because here's another one. It's called Weird Detective. And again, this is the omnibus. If the stars are wrong. The author is Van Lente, Fred Van Lente, and the art's by Gio Villanova. I think the art is very attractive. It is about a detective who is assigned strange cases that come up, like the body of a woman is found in a public pool and it's boneless. And it turns out he is changed places with a Yithian. And so here it is. It's a very cool, like 4 or 5 issue arc of a comic. So if you're into comics and want a Lovecraftian spin, I was thoroughly entertained.
Please, Matt, graphic novels. not comics. Okay.
Okay, and I do have some dolls. I mean, action.
We've got to keep the little ego that we have.
Just a question, Matt. Is there any website which you go to regularly which lists everything new that's out Lovecraftian?
I have not found it. What I rely on is I republish my list, and then I want people to comment. And so sometimes people will comment with a new book that I've never heard of. There's, for example, there's a book that in Australia came out in 2000 from Phosphorus Press or Phosphorescent Press about Dunwich, and it's like a 4-issue series, and I just can't get a hold of it. So some of these things are just rare. And if you read Donovan Locke's website, if all you want are adaptations of Lovecraft stories themselves, in his popular culture, he has a pretty up-to-date list. And then someone mentioned this one. It's a series of comics called Innsmouth. Okay, and the author and the one doing the art, who the heck is this by? Megan James. Okay, and it's played for humor. Some boob from Innsmouth, who's not a deep one, is assigned to the care of a Shoggoth, and hijinks ensue. And part of the point the author had was they're going to have non-Lovecraftian in terms of like, the Doctors Herbert and West are gay and black, and they reanimate people. And one of the people who works at the Miskatonic Library is a descendant of Alhazred, and her name is Fatima, and she's a major character. So he says, "In your face, Lovecraft," and it's like, okay, great. Well, is the story any good? It's entertaining enough. These are, I think, print on demand, and you get them from Sink/Swim Press. I'll again put a link on the webpage. So if you like humorous Lovecraftian comics, I think the art is, again, pretty attractive stuff. And I was amused. They've had 4 issues so far, and obviously more are planned. So there are new comics coming out, or reprints of old one, if you will. And I'm actually...
Matt, are you going to do your year in review?
Well, I usually do.
That you usually do?
Yeah, but it's like that's just very existential. It's like, in the moment, what did I do?
I always find it really interesting, though.
Okay, well, I'm going to say the most interesting Lovecraftian thing about this year was me, then. You know, so Mike Davis is such a fan. So I have it certified here on tape. Yeah, I'm going to put one out.
If it helps you to believe that, then yeah.
Okay. I'll usually put it out at the end of December, and I'm going to do the same.
Do you ever find yourself where we try to collect everything, and you go out of your way to collect something, but because you have so much to read, you never get around to it, and it might be 4 years before you read it?
Oh God, it's like when I moved here, and I was trying to establish my name and my profession. I had lots of time at work to write reviews and to read and to search, and now I've successfully established my name, and I go to work, and it's like drinking from a fire hose. I don't have time anymore, and I have about an hour commute each way to work for like 3 days out of the week. It's like if I want to have a life with my family, I read very little compared to what I used to.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll come home, I'm so strung out, my wife and I will watch a TV show instead of reading anything. If I can't get it on my Kindle app for my iPhone, if I get a half-hour break for lunch, and then I find myself rereading stuff. Bob Price said he had a big enough collection now that he thought if he just put everything down and started over from the beginning, he still couldn't finish it by the end of his life. And I'm probably at that point.
I'd like to get in on that question from you, Rick, because sometimes I'll buy a book that I know looks interesting, but I'm not in the particular mood to read that book for a year or two. And then all of a sudden I'll see it on my shelf and be glad that I bought it a couple of years previously. You know what I mean?
Yes. Or I'll have a book.
I always make time to read the latest Laird Barron book. I make time to read the latest John Langan thing that I pick up. Like if Charlie Strauss's new book comes out, the laundry series, that will go into the top of my shelf. For Pete Rawlick, to be honest, Pete, what I depend upon is that I buy the cover, the soft cover or the hard cover, and then I get a Kindle copy, and that's when I read it, is at lunchtime, because it's a lot easier for me that way.
Yeah.
And then I say, oh gosh, I don't have time to read all these. I stopped for a long time. I thought I read everything, and then in 2010 I couldn't say that anymore. And then about a year ago I said, screw it, I can't even collect everything anymore. So much of it is dross, self-published. I just don't know what's good anymore. Amazon won't let me keep my reviews up.
Hey, Pete, you were saying in an email the other day that you really hate ebooks.
Well, it's not that I hate ebooks. I have a problem, particularly with small press ebooks. And I've had this happen twice, maybe 3 times, where a publisher has gone out of business and has not made arrangements to continue their business dealings. Therefore, Amazon can't sell the book anymore because they have nobody to send money to. So they take it down from their catalog. And shortly thereafter, it disappears from my Kindle.
What confuses me about that is that once you buy an Amazon Kindle book, it's in your personal Amazon cloud. In other words, you speak of it as disappearing from your Kindle. I think what you mean to say is that you can't access it at all from the cloud or anything.
It's not even available. It doesn't even show up anymore.
That is confusing to me because that shouldn't happen even with a publisher that's out of business, because once the book is sold, it's sold and it should just remain in your cloud. You know what I mean? Even if they're not selling the book anymore.
Yeah, I don't know that that's actually how it works. I know that there have been other people who have reported basically if you move from one Amazon zone to another, you lose everything. If you move from England to Germany, you're in a different licensing agreement zone. You lose everything. It's very similar to the arrangement that you have with your music now that's on your iPhone or wherever, where technically you don't really own that stuff. You're leasing it. And when you die, it goes away.
You know what I like to do with the books that I publish is the matchbook thing.
And I think that's great. I like that idea.
Yeah, for those who don't know, basically it means, let's say, and other publishers do this too, I'm certainly not the only one by far, but if you buy the print copy of, say, our newest publication, the Peasley Papers, then you get the Kindle edition for a minuscule amount of money. In other words, if it's regularly $4.95, you might get it for 99 cents or $1.99. That sort of thing. And I think the matchbook program is definitely the way to go. Let people get the print copy and the Kindle copy for cheap. But they'll always have that print copy they can't lose.
And that's what I like to collect real books, because I've been burned a couple times, and I don't find the Kindle an enjoyable read at all. Mostly because when I'm falling asleep, the book falls to my chest, the Kindle falls to my face.
Yeah. That is a problem. I'll tell you where I come from on it, and I don't disagree with anything that you've said, Pete. I've been in 2 fires in my life. By that I mean I've lived in houses that have burned down twice. And each time lost, including, of course, books, because I've always read books and collected books. So no matter if it, I guess my point is this: digital or print, when we're talking about books, there's always something that can happen where you can lose a book. You can lose all your books. You know, so I'm not one of those people who say, okay, Kindle's better than print or print's better than Kindle. I think they both have their uses, and they both have their negatives, and they both have their positives. So, you know, Matt, new art book.
Oh yes,
from Centipede Press.
Yes, Rick mentioned this in one of our private discussions when we were talking about the art books that I had shown, and this is still available from Centipede Press. It's in the realms of mystery and wonder. There's a the fantastic art of Clark Ashton Smith was a paperback booklet that was published in the 1970s, and for years, decades, that was the only way any of us could enjoy the art of Clark Ashton Smith. Now, Centipede Press just published this, and it is chock full of not only his drawings, but his sculptures as well, you know, and beautiful color photographs of art that's held in private collections. So it is still available from Centipede Press. It is a gorgeous book because all of them are, but it's fairly expensive. You know, but if you, what I think about it is, I think of the, what was it? The Lovecraft Retrospective, which was the Lovecraftian art book put out by Centipede Press. What was it, in 2008 or 9? And it was like $300. I mean, it was exorbitant. But, you know, I set aside money and I got it. And now it's years later. I don't miss that I don't have that money. And I've got this glorious book of art. So if you're really a Clark Ashton Smith fanatic, aficionado, and you want the best possible sample of his art that you could get, well, now's the time to pick it up, because in 5 years, this book is going to be sold out. And then if you want to get it, you're going to be at the mercy of the used book market, and it's going to be markedly jacked up in price.
Okay.
Rick, did you like this book?
Oh, I love it.
Is this like that Lovecraft retrospective in that it's his covers and everything too, or it looked like it was a lot of his art?
It is his actual art. It is not art inspired by him. It includes some of his prose poems, some nice essays, but the main reason to get it, in my view, are the lovely photographs of his sculptures and his drawings.
If I had a complaint about it, is this, like, I would like every piece of art to have at least a caption, other than whose collection it came from.
Yes, that would be nice.
You know, we believe, because I mean, like, I've seen some which are obviously Serge Seguin, and it would be nice to identify that for people.
This is one thing. I don't know if you remember, like, I think the same thing happened in the Lovecraftian book, right? That they had thumbnails of each piece of art that described what it was, rather than necessarily having a caption. I seem to recall that. Wasn't that the case? I don't really recollect, but I think that's just like Centipede Press published The Masters of the Weird Tale about Lovecraft. It came in 2 volumes. One was a huge brick of volume of his stories. The other was a book of photographs, and the photographs are unlabeled in the book. It's like, well, damn it. I'm glad that somebody knows what these are, and they're probably links to the photographs in the index of the book or something, but why didn't you just have the photographs captioned?
So some are some are captioned, but the majority aren't.
Matt, I believe you also wanted to talk about Brian McNaughton.
Oh, yes. This is something else. I find this very interesting. Nobody else might. Brian McNaughton died, what, in the late 90s, 1996, something like that, maybe? or did he die in the early 2000s? Early 2000s, maybe it was 2006. He was a guy who writes great ghoulish Lovecraft. In fact, his World Fantasy Award was from his anthology, his single author collection, The Throne of Bones, which collected all his ghoul stories and is heavily influenced by Lovecraftian ghouls. Well, he actually had, I guess, a fairly pathetic existence. He was an alcoholic, and his whole family was alienated. I think, like, I knew some guy who was like trying to get stuff together to be able to kind of like understand his biography, and his children didn't want to talk about him, or his ex-spouse didn't want to talk about him. They just, you know, like had no good memories of him. But so there he was, like the longest job he ever held was, I think, night manager at one of those motels where you rent the room for an hour. And then he would write stories there and do anything to make a buck. And he wrote essentially pornographic stories, but because he was such a Lovecraftian, they'd be Lovecraftian tales. So he wrote this series of books called the Satan series. And these were published under his own name in the 1980s. And I'm going to publish pictures of them. Well, Wildside Press discovered him after publishing The Throne of Bones, and they let him republish these stories. Essentially, only the first one, which was Satan's mistress. Only that one was really heavily pornographic. So he excised the pornography, tightened up the writing, and it became Gemini Rising, a very good Lovecraftian story. And then they published all the others, and Downward to Darkness and Worse Things Waiting are as good a pair of Lovecraftian novels as you'll read anywhere. But I don't think the original stories were even pornographic at that point. I think they were just creepy Lovecraftian stories. So, and then The House Across the Way is not Lovecraftian at all. It's about the Fae. And okay, well, he wrote the Weird Walter stories, which people talked about for years. That was about this janitor at Miskatonic University, you know, supposedly, or this detective. And it turns out all they are is crass pornography with a few Lovecraftian names in it. But then he wrote under a bunch of pseudonyms like Mark Bloodstone, which are like Bad Penny. They're just really bad pornography. Okay, well, for Pandora Press, he wrote like 6 books under the pseudonym Sheena Clayton. And one of them essentially is a Lovecraftian romance. It is really a Deep Ones novel. I have a copy. It's one of the jewels of my collection because this crummy little paperback is just really unavailable. It's 1983 paperback from Pandora Press. It's called Tide of Desire. And I got a copy, read it, and it's a pretty darn good Lovecraftian story, except for the very end, which sucks, okay? And we always all wondered, well, what if he had lived long enough, Wildside Press would have let him finish this the way he wanted to and reprinted it, but it never happened. And now this book is just frankly unobtainable. Until, this is why I wanted to talk about him, XXX Books, which don't open up this website at work. I'm not even going to post it to the eZine page because it opens up to essentially a porn site. But they're publishing all 6 of the Sheena Clayton novels as ebooks. Now, most of the Sheena Clayton novels are, again, just typical McNaughton naughty porn. Not terrible hardcore like the Mark Bloodstone stuff, but
naughty porn as opposed to not naughty porn.
Well, you know, it's like more like a little bit risque.
Okay.
Not a lot of heavy scenes like that. I felt ashamed reading Bad Penny. Okay, but I didn't feel ashamed reading the Sheena Clayton book. Okay, but if you want to read a really decent Lovecraftian novel, and you could say this would have been one iteration of it, just one draft away from being really great. It's now available for like $2 as an ebook from XXX Books.
And title again?
Tide of Desire. I'm going to put these on the website.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
I believe for the month of December, it's $1.11.
$1.11. I mean, how could you beat that for something that reads so much better than a lot of the dribble that's published these days?
And you will get a catalog every month in your mailbox of everything else they publish.
Please tell me it's still being published with that amazing cover you showed, Matt.
Yes, it is, but it's an electronic cover.
So I'm gonna get that electronically. I'm gonna print it out a page at a time, and I'm gonna bind it together.
Pete is making me sleepy.
You know, of the cleaned up ones that you mentioned, is it the House Across the Way? I thought was the best.
Yeah, but that's not even Lovecraftian.
It's sort of a little Mackin-esque and a little Robert W. Chambers, and there are elements in there. It's not a Cthulhu mythos story. It has.
Oh, I thought of it was it's a very good book.
I think it does bring in the King in Yellow slightly, if I remember correctly, and it makes reference to some of those things in the White People, if my memory's right.
Yeah, it. Like I said, I thought it was a well written book, but I didn't think of it as Lovecraftian. I thought of it as dealing with the Fae. Anyway,
I'll agree with you. It's not Lovecraftian, but it's got some elements of sort of the writers you read as influences on Lovecraft. Some little homages to Mackin and Chambers.
Right.
Well,
that was what I wanted to mention, that if you're really a McNaughton kind of guy, now you have your chance for just $1.50, maybe.
Well, last but not least, the holidays are coming up, and I like to throw out my ideas for what you can get that. This was Matt's idea for what you can get the Lovecraftian in your life. Anybody out there wants to know what to get me, I really appreciate two things. Number one, when people become a Patreon, helps out a lot. Even if you're just at $5 a month, it adds up, and this is my only job. So just Google Lovecraft eZine Patreons, and you'll get a lot of extra content too. The other thing I really enjoy is, and this is at the website too, Lovecraft eZine website, lovecraftezine.com. Going through the Amazon portal, that's one of the tabs at the top. Let me just make sure I'm telling you right. Yeah, Amazon portal is one of the tabs at the very top. And if you're going to do your Christmas shopping on Amazon, for example, or buy anything through Amazon, if you go through that portal, it's not going to cost you anything extra, but it will give me a bit of a referral fee, and that adds up as well. So thanks for listening to my two pitches there. Now to pitch a few other people. This H.P. Lovecraft, The Complete Fiction from the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, an audio book, just came out, and you can buy it in digital. I just Googled it. I don't know that it's at hplhs.org. This is real. They did a really great job on this. You can buy it like this. If you're listening, you can't see what I'm holding up, but it's nice cardboard, and it looks like a book. And inside is a USB full of MP3 stories. And the other really neat thing about it is there's a library card in it with actual signatures. You know what I mean, from Clark Ashton Smith, Frank Belknap Long, Dan Wilson, and a bunch of other people, Stephen King. So it's pretty cool. That's one of my suggestions. That you guys got any suggestions for what you can get the Lovecraftian in your life?
Yes, I have an entire list on my Amazon page. It's public. No.
Yes, I was going to say, and please buy Lovecraft eZine books.
You could get a copy of Peasley's Papers.
That's right.
Well,
the Peasley Papers.
Yes, you could.
You could. If you want to make your life better in every way, you could.
I recommend also Sam Gafford's House of Nodens.
I just got that. I'm really looking forward to reading it.
I'm looking at that. It's a different take. I was a little afraid when he wrote it that he's duplicate something I'm doing, but he's doing it from a different angle.
Okay.
Still a very good book.
If we're talking books, you know, Dim Shores has that new Looming Low, which is really pretty great. I've read a couple of stories is all, but Joshi hates it, so it's got to be good.
I saw a joke the other day online. I forget who wrote it, but this book is good, but is it Joshi hates it good? Has it risen to that level yet?
I also picked up from Broken Eye Books, Ride the Starwind, which is really cool looking. It's outer space Lovecraftian horror, you know, and it's by all the same people we all love: Lucy A. Snyder, Cody Goodfellow, Nadia Bulkin, all the people that we're used to. But it's also then illustrated throughout by all the artists that we love, like Nick Gucker and Dave Felton, and you know, all those guys. And then when I picked that up, I also picked this up, and I don't know if you guys have seen this from Broken Eye Books. The Package from Desert Shore by Joseph S. Pulver Sr. Has everybody seen this little chapbook?
Jeez, I'm a friend of Joe's, and I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, it's really cool. These guys do really good work. The cover's got that cool feel that a lot of these new covers are coming out with, and it's got some art in it, and it's an attractive little chapbook. And that's Broken Eye Books, which I believe is just brokeneyebooks.com.
Joe's in that other anthology.
Joe is in this, yeah. I mean, this thing is huge. If you guys can see this thing, it's phone book sized.
Ride the Starwind.
Ride the Starwind, yeah. And it is 29 all-star authors in here. And it's all people that, you know, if you're in the Lovecraft circle, you've heard of. So.
All right.
So there's a couple of gift ideas.
Matt, any ideas?
Well, I was thinking, okay, there are plenty of book ideas floating around there. If you have someone who likes games, I love Fantasy Flight's products. Their games are ridiculously complicated. But there's a kind of a cooperative board game dice game called Elder Sign. And I think it's a lot of fun to play. You can play 2 to 5 people or more even. It's $30 for the base game, available through Amazon. And I just, whenever even my wife has played it, and she's not the biggest any kind of Lovecraft fan, it turns out. But she enjoyed it. There are expansions if you want. So I think that would be something to think about. And another thing to think about would be if you like music. If you want kind of creepy Lovecraftian music, I think the rock opera Dreams from the Witch House, which came out, 2 years ago, it's a marvelous piece of music.
Yeah, and it's available in LP as well as CD.
Right, and that's available through the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society store, I'm pretty sure. So those are 2 things that I would think about as being rather affordable and quite a lot of fun.
Matt, have you ever listened to any music by The Unquiet Void?
You know, not really. It's hard for me, like if I'm home, I generally don't have the time. I used to have really great speakers. When I got married, I had these Bose Monitor 10 speakers. They dominated my living room. And I'd listen to all of my classical music very loud. And then I got married. And then it turns out that the stereo system looked fairly clunky in the middle of the living room. So then I got wires through the walls, and I got these bookshelf speakers. Then it turned out they were, really kind of loud, it turns out. And Now I've got a lot of CDs down in the basement, and I can't just come home and crank things up. So no, I don't have the I have to make the opportunity, and it's easier for me to listen on a CD in my car on the way to work, you know. So no, I haven't. I'd be interested.
Yeah. So the Unquiet Void makes Lovecraftian music, soundscapes and Lovecraftian inspired music, and I was pleasantly surprised. I started listening. Well, I had a couple CDs that I've sort of forgotten about, and then I got Spotify, and they had some of the albums on Spotify, and I picked some of put those into my playlist, and it's really good stuff. I'm really enjoying it, and apparently they're doing a sale right now on their website, The Unquiet Void. So there's a recommendation for Christmas presents. Read the Lovecraftian in your life.
Well, John Langan was supposed to be on the show today. He needed to reschedule. Not his fault. It kind of was rescheduling need on both of our parts, I think. He had a very hectic week, so we're rescheduling him for January the 28th. So we'll talk to him then. Yeah, if you're... I think we've got some new people listening to the show lately. If you're new to our show and you're wondering what we're all about, well, this gives you a good taste. We're just a bunch of guys sitting around talking about geeky genre, horror, Lovecraft stuff, books, movies, the works. So thanks for being part of our little group. We appreciate it. All right. Anything else, guys? Did I miss anything?
Prizes. You got prizes.
Yeah. Again, I've got 9, thanks to Kelly. Was 10, became 9. 9 I Lovecraft prizes to give away. 4 for iOS and 5 for Android. And I believe this is the Color Out of Space one, their newest one. So if you'd like to be in the running for one of those for free anytime between now and the 10th of December 2017, you can send an email to Lovecraft eZine Prizes at Gmail, all together, Lovecraft eZine Prizes at gmail.com, and put I Lovecraft in the title. And if you want to say anything to the group, put I Lovecraft in the title of the email. And if you want to say anything to the group, you can just put whatever you want in the body of the email. And I'll randomly choose 9 people next week. So, all right. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for being on the show with me. Really appreciate it. Talk to everybody next week.